Well, I'm Dave Ferris. I'm a financial advisor. I grew up in Franklin. I work with my dad. So I've given this presentation at a couple senior living facilities in Franklin, also the Walpole Senior Center as well too. So I hope you get something out of it. I wish we had the presentation, but we'll send it out afterwards too. So I'm going to be walking back and forth here just a little bit, but estimates $2.9 billion to $34 billion a year in elderly fraud or scams. Like, that's a pretty wide number, which we'll get to in a little bit on why it's not always, why people don't always, you know, if you tell people that it happened, it's, you know, there's a number of reasons which we'll get into a little bit later. Over 60% of the time it's somebody that people know and trust, whether a family member, a caregiver, or someone that they interact with on a daily basis. And women are more than twice as likely to be hit with fraud more than men. Do we have any guesses on why that is?
It's like trusting.
Exactly. Some people say more negative, naive, but I agree with you completely, 100%. Especially your generation. It's sort of how you grew up. So, you know, that's just the way it is.
It's a good thing.
Yeah. Well, I got a question. So,
to be able to trust someone.
well, I think that's how business is run. That's how everything. That's how the world moves. So, so a question: who do you think has been hit with fraud most? People ages 15 to 25, 35 to 45, or 70 plus?
70 plus.
Well, you're all wrong. It's actually the youngest generation.
Really?
Yeah. Well, they're online a lot more.
Oh.
They're communicating online. So, you know, it's out there. Unfortunately, it's not, you know, it's people don't talk about it as much as they can. But, you know, again, we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about elder fraud too, so. Also, around the holidays, it increases a lot. I think people get more desperate to buy presents and whatnot too. So that's typically, we see a lot more around the holidays. So, you know, fraud can also be anything from taking or using someone else's property that they don't know about, forging signatures, or taking advantage of their trust in general. So it's kind of broader than just your typical someone calls you up and they, you know, they tell you that you won the lottery too. So again, family members, caregivers. I'm going to put this up right here.
You can push these over there already.
Yeah.
Music's still on.
Thank you.
Well, I'm what now?
Over you.
Yeah, all right, mother, I
Oh my gosh, perfect.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Now I feel very official over here. All right, most common abusers: family members, caregivers, con artists, strangers, so that kind of covers everybody. And also sweethearts too, which we'll get into. Some things that we look for as financial advisors is people that, and something I want you to keep an eye out for, people that you care about too, is people that are reluctant to talk about their finances, or maybe they had in the past. Maybe there's sudden withdrawals. It's something that we look for. Changes to investment style. You know, typically people that are retired are more conservative investors. They're looking for income for a lifetime. If suddenly we see that they're becoming more aggressive, then that's a red flag for us. Also, you know, signatures, forged signatures, we keep an eye out for that too. Most firms do. And sudden changes in wills, trust, and things like that as well too. So behavioral changes that we should all keep an eye out for each other, friends and family. Well, any kind of deterioration, obviously. Problems understanding their financial information, their statements. Changes in, obviously, personal appearance. That's, you know, something that's concerning that we should all keep an eye out for. And, you know, new best friends or sweethearts, as well as someone that's been accompanied with a caregiver that maybe is overprotective of the person's assets, and they're, you know, they're highly invested and the assets of the elder person too. So, also social situations would include people that become financially dependent on someone that they haven't in the past, maybe a child or a grandchild that needs to rely on, the grandparent for financial assistance. Let's see here. So why do we think a lot of it goes unreported? Like I said in the beginning, $2.9 billion to $34 billion each year. That's a really wide number. Why do we think that is?
Communications today is so widespread, they can communicate with us in so many different ways.
Yeah,
I think that's a problem.
absolutely. Also embarrassment too, that hurt. Denial, any other ones? Well, my point is that there's nothing to be embarrassed about here. These are professionals. They don't just target elderly people, they target everybody. So really, I'd highly stress just having open communication with your friends, your family. Chances are, if you've seen it, then someone else has seen the exact same scam too. So again, a lot of people think embarrassment, shame, guilt, but it's just really, everyone's been affected by it too. So open communication. So now I'm going to go through a couple different scams that are common. The first one being the romance scam. And I'll just kind of give a story where there's actually recently an elderly fellow in New York, and he moved to a new home and had trouble finding new friends. So he developed a relationship online with a woman, and she lived in California, and she was going to come out and visit him. And first she needed money for surgery, so he gave money for that, and then he was in denial because he was really hoping and ashamed that he trusted someone to have this relationship. And so eventually she asked for a little more money, and after a couple of weeks they kind of figured out that it was a scam. So that's just, it's common. It's not as common as I would have expected it to be, but it's out there. A lot of times they'll either disappear right away, or they'll keep kind of asking for money to see if we can get more out of the person. So also there's the grandparent scam, which affected me personally. Actually January 4th of this year, I got a call from my grandma. We talk to each other fairly regularly. And first I missed her first call. When she called me later, she was at the bank ready to wire me money because someone called, I called her.
Yeah.
And said that I was at a wedding in Buffalo, and I got in a DUI accident, and I needed money for surgery. And they were so good, they said that I didn't sound like myself because I had stitches in my lip, so it didn't even sound like me. My grandma was all the way down at the bank. Luckily, my uncle was with her, called me right before, and said, wait, none of this has happened, and I'm glad I picked up that phone call because she was down there ready to transfer assets. Like, that's me personally. Like, people don't think it'll affect, it affects them, but it does. And yeah, so typically, like I said, that's one example. Or I heard of the student, they'll know, like, if I heard from another person at another seminar that like their grandson who went to school in Pennsylvania, like they call us the Pennsylvania Police Department, and they need to speak with you, and don't tell mom and dad. It's kind of the go-to. So there's a number of different scams in that category, but the whole idea is they're trying to get you to wire money, and there's a lot better ways to transfer money than to wire money, and a lot more secure ways to do it too. So also there's a tech support scam. You'll either get a pop-up from your local bank, maybe Google, something that you use every day that says you need to rechange your password, or they need your credit card information, or call this number, and otherwise you're going to lose your information, or something in the nature of that will happen to you too. So I recommend always getting a second set of eyes on this. I've seen like Rockland Trust Bank, like a lot of times they'll change the logo just a little bit. Like Rockland, they actually had a 1 as one of the L's, and because that Rockland Trust didn't recognize it, and they've done the same thing with Wells Fargo, just changing the name just a little bit so that it goes under the radar and people don't see it, but it's a name that they think that they trust too. So always get a second opinion from a friend or family about changing passwords or anything like that too. So has anybody here won the lottery? Did anyone get that one? Maybe Maryland? New Mexico, or, yeah. I mean, that's pretty obvious. If you didn't buy a lottery ticket from Maryland, you probably didn't win. So, I mean, that's also if you want a prize or a trip, and typically they like to say, all right, we just need a little bit of money to cover the taxes or whatever, and then we'll send you the rest. So that's pretty straightforward. That's what most people, assume from this. Also, home improvement scams. On my other side of the family, my family lives in, they lived when they were alive in Pinehurst, and someone came to their house and said that their driveway was not legal anymore and that they needed to change out the stones. So, being from the Midwest and being very nice, they said, okay. And they gave them $5,000, and they said that they would come back and take the next $5,000 once they were done redoing the driveway. So they never heard from them. Again, a lot of times people do these around natural disasters because people are more vulnerable, they're looking to trust each other, and they're probably more desperate for money at that point too. So a little bit on caregivers, it just someone that's new in someone's life that's, asking about, helping with finances, helping them with their daily living, and we always ask if they come into our office to say, hey, do you mind stepping outside? We just want to talk to our client for a second and make sure they know what's going on and they're aware of everything too. So just, make sure that you have the people around you that you trust, and, everything should be okay with that. But I'm sure we all have pretty good networks around us too. But just something that obviously I want to cover. And also, it's good to have like a son or someone that you trust to have like a duplicate statement that they can keep an eye on regularly, or someone that you trust, a friend or a trustee or whoever, maybe not the dog, but just to get duplicate statements to make sure everything's in order, and if there's any withdrawals that are excessive, we keep an eye out for it, but it always helps to get a second set of eyes too. All right, a term in our industry, undue influence. That's where you use someone else's trust to take advantage of them. Like I went over a little earlier, that can be anything from, directing them a certain way in a conversation, having them change their wills last minute, speaking and kind of taking over the conversation over the phone or wherever. I've seen it a couple times, but I've never seen it follow through. It's something that we always keep an eye out for, obviously, but it's less common than I thought it would be, which is good. So different ways to sort of prevent this. I think, being aware of strangers around you, new people, that's the obvious one. Also, just staying active with your community, with your friends. The whole idea is to have open conversation with people that you trust and you care about. And with that, like I said earlier, if it's happened to you, I'm sure it's happened to someone else too. So really keeping an open dialogue with people that you trust and care about. And reporting, any suspected mistreatment of people that you know. I have some resources over there too, just different government websites, nonprofit organizations that deal specifically with this. So I encourage everyone to take one of those. And just being aware of warning signs for people that you care about, and having families and everyone involved too. So obviously organizing finances too, from my side. I think people like to put a lot of little nest eggs here and there, which I understand. Obviously we recommend having it closer together. It's easier to organize, but if you have a good system in place, then what can I say? And obviously reviewing estate documents too. Given my profession, I work with a lot of attorneys, and a lot of them are happy to review everything, and they recommend reviewing it every 5 years because the laws change so frequently, even this year. Make sure everything's up to date. Every 5 years is what they typically recommend. And even bank accounts, having beneficiaries up to date on that as well too is a new thing that we're recommending for a lot of people. And then just monitoring your finances regularly with people that you know and trust. Again, I got the resources over there. You know, like I said, I'm a financial advisor. If any of you have want to look at your risk level or see, you know, how your investments are, if you're too risky or if you're afraid of outliving your assets, or if you're looking to supplement any sort of income, we'd be happy to sit down and get a cup of coffee and have a complimentary review too. But that's all I have. What questions do you have? Is it the podium? Is it intimidating?
No, you look more comfortable.
Oh, yeah? I feel more comfortable. I got somewhere to put my hands.
You were talking about younger people. My 17-year-old grandson got the call about the Social Security thing. They called him 3 times in one day, and luckily he came home and said, somebody's calling me about Social Security. He didn't do anything with it. But, you know, 17 years old.
Yeah, I mean, he's not even making money to qualify. for
Right,
Social
well, I mean, he
Security.
has a summer job, but
Yeah.
still,
Yeah.
yeah. They're trying to get you from every direction.
Yeah, there's always new ones. That's why open communication and just having that conversation, it's really what I stress the most too.
Well, what did you say? I said, I think it's-
Oh, yeah, I got a call from a woman today wanting to talk to me about my chronic pain.
Me too. I thought you
We got the
said
same call
thing.
today.
Exactly.
You said that would be you?
That would be all right. These phone calls.
I started getting phone calls in Chinese from
Oh,
New York
I
City.
got one of
Oh,
those.
yeah?
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, foreign languages, yeah. The whole message is in foreign language.
Well, thank you.
Thank
you.
you.
Very good.